As a mechanic, what are the dumbest things that someone did to their car that led it to malfunction? Once I had a customer when I worked at the Oldsmobile dealership that had a Cutlass Calais with GM's miserable 2.3 litres quad-4 engine. As was typical with these engines, it had a blown head gasket. The owner was an older gentleman and he was unhappy with the price that he was quoted to do the work. He claimed he used to work on cars when he was a young man and he didn't feel like doing it now at his age, but that he wasn't paying what the asking price was, so he decided to do it himself because he knew how to change a head gasket. So he drove off with the car, as it billowed clouds of white smoke out of the tailpipe. About a month later the car showed back up at the dealership on the back of a flatbed truck. He asked what the price would be to finish the job. When I went to look at the car, I discovered the cylinder head, intake and exhaust manifolds, and timing chain cover in the trunk, as well as the radiator and cooling fan and a box of mixed hardware and brackets in the back seat. When he was told that the price would be nearly double what the original quote was, he about had a heart attack. He complained that it shouldn't cost that much because he had done half the work for me. What he didn't realize is that this was not a 1957 Chevy. There were a lot of steps that needed to be taken that he did not take when he took this car apart. The cylinder head, for example, needed to be torque-keyed in a specific sequence during disassembly to prevent warping, and he had not done that. As a result, the cylinder head was warped extremely badly and needed to be replaced. You could only mill 0.010 of an inch from the deck of the cylinder head and the warpage far exceeded that. He broke the timing chain guides and the tensioner pin was bent, so those would have to be replaced as well. He also broke a few head bolts off in the cylinder block because he didn't detorque the head, so now I had to extract the broken bolts and repair the threads in the deck of the block. Plus I had to sort out all the brackets and bolts and miscellaneous hardware and figure out where they all went because he didn't organize anything when he took it apart. The worst part is Luke Oldsmobile, which is the dealership I was working at, was actually a very reputable place and the price he was quoted for the job was very fair. I won't say we were the cheapest, but we were far from the most expensive. And we had 97% customer satisfaction, which made us the highest scoring dealership on the East Coast for Oldsmobile division and 4th highest in the country. He basically tried to apply 1950s engine building techniques to a late 90s engine with a very fussy design for the time and ended up royally screwing himself. And let me tell you, with all of the misplaced and missing hardware and bracketry, it was not exactly an easy time getting the car back together and running again. A number of years ago, I was working for a company who imported Suzuki cars into Germany. I was responsible for technical after-sales at that time. A young lady brought her nearly new car to the workshop and reported that the seat belt lock was not working anymore on the right rear seat. The latch was even impossible to be inserted into the lock mechanism. The dealer asked if they were allowed to replace it on warranty. Since it was a safety-related item, I confirmed and asked him to send the malfunctioning belt lock to me for investigation. In addition, defects in such parts were extremely rare cases. 2 weeks later, I had the same dealer on the phone again, reporting the same condition reoccurring in the same car. I decided that he should replace the lock a second time, but send in again the defect part. I had not looked into the first defect lock yet, but now my curiosity was ignited. Is it really possible that the same rare condition has reoccurred again on the same car in the hands of the same customer? The housing of the belt lock was made of hard plastic and contained no serviceable parts, so I could not simply disassemble it. Instead, out of curiosity, I broke it open using brute force. And what did I find inside? I could not believe this. The lock housing was stuffed with jelly bears, sweet and sticky and colorful jelly bears. So, I broke open the second returned part, and it was the same condition there. For that I rang the dealer mechanic again and asked to investigate with the lady customer, and the final explanation for this strange condition was as follows: she had a young child which she placed every now and then on this seat and for whom she locked the belt. But the child did not like being buckled up at all. It therefore secretly opened the lock while its mother was driving and started stuffing sweets into the lock housing, then reporting to its mother that the lock was failing. The lady did not recognize the very reason for this condition, but instead thought that there was an actual malfunction of the seat belt lock which needed replacing under warranty. Strange things happen on this planet. In 1967, I was working at the Kanoko station up on the highway when a woman drove in a Corvair. I walked out to the pump and she motioned me away saying I know what I am doing and don't need any help. As she opened the truck trunk, took the oil filler cap off and began to put water in the engine from the hose next to the pump. I walked over and turned the hose faucet off and she became irate. She had heard about how mechanics at service stations screwed unsuspecting customers and she was going to have none of it. I thought she was going to become physically violent when I snatched the keys from her hand to prevent her from starting the car and driving away. She marched into the station and called her husband to tell him the whole story. He showed up shortly, told her to go wait in his pickup as I explained what had happened, and helped me push the car into the service bay and onto the lift. He took his wife home while I drained the crankcase, filled it with cheap oil, ran it for a few minutes, changed it again and put good oil into it.